You've probably never used a BlackRock product. You can't buy it in a store. You won't see it on your phone. And yet, it's everywhere around you. From the mortgage on your house, to your retirement fund, to the companies that make your phone, your car, your food, BlackRock is quietly behind it all. With more than $10 trillion under management, BlackRock isn't just a company, it's an empire of influence, one that stretches across Wall Street, Silicon Valley, European governments, and even the world's central banks. And yet, most people barely know it exists. BlackRock likes to describe itself as a responsible guardian of people's money. But critics see it differently, as the company that quietly owns a piece of everything in the world. How did a single firm, started in a tiny New York office in the 1980s, grow powerful enough to influence the fate of nations? And what does that power mean for democracy, for markets, and for all of us? This is the story of BlackRock, the company that runs the world from the shadows. It all began in 1988 with a man named Larry Fink. Fink was a Wall Street banker with a bold idea. What if technology could make investing smarter and safer? He founded a small firm called BlackRock, focusing on risk management and data-driven investing. While most of Wall Street was still gambling on intuition and gut feeling, BlackRock's secret weapon was software, a powerful analytics system that could calculate risk in real time. It was called Aladdin, short for Asset, Liability, Debt, and Derivative Investment Network. At first, Aladdin was just a tool for BlackRock's own traders, but soon other banks wanted access too. By the late 1990s, Aladdin was being used by some of the world's biggest financial institutions, even BlackRock's competitors. Fast forward to today, and Aladdin now analyzes and tracks over $20 trillion in assets worldwide. To put that into perspective, that's more money than the entire GDP of the United States. While others saw markets, BlackRock saw data, and data, in the right hands, is power. By the early 2000s, BlackRock was already managing billions. But after the 2008 financial crisis, it grew into one of the most powerful financial companies in the world. Why? Because when the crisis hit, governments and central banks needed experts to clean up the financial mess. And who did they call? BlackRock. The U.S. Federal Reserve hired them to manage toxic assets. European governments sought their advice on bank bailouts. And from that point on, BlackRock wasn't just a market player. It became a trusted advisor to the world's most powerful institutions. So how does one company gain this much influence? The key is index funds, investment products that track the stock market instead of trying to beat it. They're cheap, simple, and popular. When you invest in a retirement plan or ETF, there's a good chance that money goes through BlackRock's iShares, one of the largest index fund brands on Earth. This is where things get interesting. Because index funds don't pick just one company. They own a piece of every major company in the market. That means BlackRock is now a top shareholder in almost every big corporation you can name. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Tesla, ExxonMobil, Pfizer, JP Morgan Chase. If you've heard of it, chances are BlackRock owns a part of it. And not just owns it, but votes in shareholder meetings, influences corporate boards, and decides on key issues like climate policy, executive pay, and mergers. BlackRock doesn't have to control 51% of a company to wield power. Just being one of the top 3 shareholders is enough to shape how that company behaves. This means that a single firm quietly has a say in how global capitalism itself operates. But if BlackRock's ownership is visible, its real power lies in something invisible. It's technology. Aladdin isn't just a computer system. It's a massive artificial intelligence network that monitors financial markets, tracks risks, and even suggests trades automatically. It watches over hundreds of financial institutions, including central banks, insurance companies, and rival asset managers. That means when Aladdin analyzes risk or makes predictions, the entire financial industry listens. Some critics say that makes BlackRock a kind of financial operating system for the world. If Aladdin made a mistake or was manipulated, it could affect markets on a global scale, like pulling one thread that unravels the whole system. And here's the twist. Most of these institutions don't have a real alternative. They rely on Aladdin because it's the best. But that also means they're dependent on BlackRock's technology and worldview. It's not just influence, it's infrastructure. Before we dive deeper, a quick break to thank today's sponsor, The Alchemist, your personal trading assistant that uses smart automation to analyze markets and execute trades. No hype, no chaos, just strategy, data, and control. Check out the link in the description and use the code BlackRock for 10% off your subscription. Now, let's get back to how one company came to quietly shape the modern world. BlackRock says it's politically neutral, but its influence goes far beyond the stock market. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic crashed the global economy, the U.S. Federal Reserve once again turned to BlackRock, this time to manage its emergency bond buying programs worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Yes, the same company that owns shares in nearly every major corporation was now also helping decide which companies would get rescued. In Europe, BlackRock has advised the European Central Bank, the UK Treasury, and the European Commission on everything from bank regulations to climate policy. Critics see a huge conflict of interest. How can a company that profits from corporate investments also shape the rules that govern them? It's like letting the fox guard the henhouse, but the fox is managing $10 trillion. There's also the question of lobbying. BlackRock spends millions each year to influence policy in Washington, Brussels, and other capitals, especially on financial regulation and climate rules that could affect its business. And behind it all is Larry Fink, the CEO, whose annual letters to shareholders are read like manifestos for global capitalism. Fink often talks about sustainability and stakeholder capitalism, urging companies to go green. But critics argue that while BlackRock talks about climate responsibility, it still invests billions in fossil fuels, mining, and heavy industry. So, is it genuine change or just good PR? Here's the problem. When one company controls that much wealth, the line between private influence and public power starts to blur. If BlackRock sold even a small portion of its holdings, markets could crash overnight. If Aladdin made an error, it could trigger a chain reaction across global finance. And if governments rely on BlackRock's advice, while BlackRock also profits from the same markets, who's really in charge? Critics warn that the world is becoming dangerously dependent on a single institution, one that's unelected, unaccountable, and largely invisible. Even some economists call it too big to fail and too big to regulate. There are fears that if BlackRock ever faced a major crisis, it could make 2008 look small by comparison. But others say the opposite, that BlackRock's scale actually prevents chaos because it acts as a stabilizer, spreading risk and bringing discipline to markets. The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. So where does BlackRock go from here? The company has already expanded beyond finance. It's investing in AI companies, climate technology, real estate, and digital infrastructure. And as the global economy shifts toward green energy and automation, BlackRock is positioning itself at the center of that transformation. Larry Fink has hinted that data, not money, will be the real source of power in the future. And with Aladdin, BlackRock already controls one of the largest data networks in finance. But there's growing pressure for accountability. Regulators in the US and Europe are beginning to ask tough questions. Should a private firm have this much control? Should Aladdin be treated like critical infrastructure, just like power grids or telecom systems? Because if one company effectively owns a piece of everything, can markets ever really be free? BlackRock doesn't print money, it doesn't run governments, but in many ways it shapes how money and power flow across the globe. Its influence reaches from Wall Street to Washington, from London to Beijing, touching the lives of billions of people who've never even heard its name. It's not a conspiracy, it's not science fiction, it's simply the result of scale and trust. We gave BlackRock our pensions, our mortgages, our savings, and our data, and in return, it became the quiet backbone of the global economy. The question now isn't just how big BlackRock will get, but whether the world can afford a company that's already this powerful. Because when one firm owns a slice of everything, it doesn't just invest in the world's future, it becomes the world's future. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the company that owns the world. If you found this interesting, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories about power, money, and the hidden systems shaping our world. Until next time, stay curious,